Ladies and gentlemen, today we are witnessing a tectonic shift in global power dynamics. America is shocked, the world is stunned, and the reason is one bold strategic move by India that has rewritten the playbook. Strategic independence has become the cornerstone of India's rise in the global order. For decades, India was seen as a balancing force, often positioned between major global powers, maintaining an image of non-alignment. But this new move has changed everything. It is not about merely staying neutral. It is about asserting autonomy in decision-making, prioritizing national interest above all else, and shaping policies without bending to external pressure. This is a fundamental shift that has left many global observers stunned, particularly because it defies traditional patterns of global politics. In the past, countries in the developing world were often compelled to choose sides in the rivalry between global superpowers. Economic dependence, security considerations, and geopolitical vulnerabilities left little room for true independence. But India has systematically dismantled this pattern. It has demonstrated that in the 21st century, strategic independence is not only possible, but also essential for sustainable growth and security. Instead of succumbing to pressure from the West or East, India has embraced a multi-alignment strategy, engaging with all, aligning with none. This means forging strong economic partnerships with the United States while simultaneously deepening energy and defense ties with Russia and expanding trade relations with the Middle East and Asia Pacific. Such a strategy gives India flexibility and leverage, ensuring that its sovereignty is never compromised. This approach also reflects India's understanding of how global power dynamics are shifting. The world is no longer bipolar or even unipolar. It is multipolar, and in a multipolar world, rigid alliances can be liabilities. Strategic independence allows India to pivot quickly in response to global uncertainties, from trade wars to supply chain disruptions. When Western nations imposed sanctions on certain countries, India charted its own course, continuing energy imports to safeguard domestic stability while maintaining diplomatic balance. This move sent a powerful message. India will not allow global politics to dictate its energy security or economic well-being. Another crucial element of this independence is India's economic resilience. A nation cannot exercise true strategic freedom if it is financially vulnerable. Recognizing this, India has aggressively pursued economic reforms, attracted foreign investments, and boosted manufacturing capabilities under initiatives like Make in India. By doing so, it has reduced over-reliance on imports and created a robust domestic industrial base. Today, India is not just a large consumer market, it is emerging as a global manufacturing hub and a key player in the technology and digital economy. This economic strength translates into bargaining power on the world stage. Furthermore, strategic independence is deeply linked to defense self-reliance. India has learned hard lessons from past conflicts, where dependence on foreign arms suppliers created vulnerabilities. Through indigenous defense production and advancements in critical technologies such as space systems, cybersecurity, and artificial intelligence, India is ensuring that its military preparedness is never hostage to external approvals or sanctions. This autonomy in defense reinforces the broader strategic independence, giving India the confidence to act without fear of supply chain disruptions during crises. Perhaps the most significant aspect of India's strategic independence is the psychological shift it represents. For decades, a narrative was that global powers would dictate the terms and emerging nations would adapt. India has flipped that narrative. It has shown that with vision, resilience, and bold diplomacy, India's recent geopolitical maneuver has been nothing short of a masterstroke, a calculated, multidimensional strategy that has rewritten the rules of global diplomacy. For decades, the international system has operated under the assumption that emerging powers must align themselves with one of the dominant blocs to secure economic and security guarantees. India has shattered that assumption by demonstrating that influence does not require allegiance. It requires leverage. And today, India possesses that leverage in abundance. This geopolitical brilliance lies in India's ability to maintain relations with opposing blocs while advancing its own national interests without compromise. Consider the global context. The world is increasingly divided, with tensions between the United States and China escalating, and Western nations imposing sanctions on countries like Russia. Most nations have been forced into hard choices, choosing sides, cutting ties, and sacrificing economic stability for political alignment. India, however, charted an alternative path. It engaged with Washington as a strategic partner in defense and technology, deepened economic cooperation with Europe, continued strong energy and defense ties with Moscow, and simultaneously expanded its influence in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. This ability to maintain equilibrium in a polarized world is what makes India's move extraordinary. India's diplomatic agility is not opportunistic, it is strategic. It understands that the 21st century is not unipolar or bipolar, but multipolar, a world where multiple power centers coexist, compete, and collaborate. Rather than being constrained by rigid alliances, India has embraced a doctrine of multi-alignment, ensuring that no single country or bloc can claim monopoly over its strategic decisions. This has positioned India as a mediator, a connector, and an indispenser partner for countries navigating global turbulence. When energy markets were destabilized by sanctions, India maintained its imports from Russia, cushioning its economy from price shocks, while simultaneously strengthening renewable energy cooperation with Western nations. It did so without bending to external pressure, signaling to the world that its sovereignty is not negotiable. At the heart of this masterstroke is India's soft power and diplomatic credibility. Unlike many nations that project influence through coercion or intervention, India leverages dialogue, cultural diplomacy, and economic cooperation. Its leadership role in global forums such as the G20 and its active participation in initiatives like BRICS and the Quad reflect this dual approach, building bridges across competing platforms while avoiding entanglement in their rivalries. Hosting major international summits and leading conversations on climate change, digital governance, and global health has further cemented India's status as a thought leader rather than a follower. Regional diplomacy adds another layer to this strategy. South Asia has historically been a theater of geopolitical competition, but India has redefined its role from a regional power to a global influencer with regional roots. It has strengthened connectivity projects with Southeast Asia, engaged in strategic dialogues with the Middle East, and deepened defense partnerships with countries in Africa. Simultaneously, it has enhanced its naval presence in the Indian Ocean, ensuring security for vital trade routes and projecting itself as a responsible maritime power. This is not mere defense posturing, it is an assertion that India will be a guarantor of stability in one of the most critical geopolitical theaters of the century. Another key dimension is India's approach to technology and security diplomacy, recognizing that conflicts will be fought in cyberspace, and through economic influence, India has built strategic technology partnerships with multiple global players while maintaining control over its digital infra. India's recent approach to energy security and innovation has not only safeguarded its domestic stability, but also positioned the country as a global leader in sustainable solutions. In an era when energy is increasingly being used as a geopolitical tool, India has demonstrated remarkable foresight by diversifying its sources, investing heavily in renewables, and creating a long-term framework that balances affordability, accessibility, and sustainability. This combination of pragmatism and ambition has surprised many global observers, especially because it contrasts sharply with the dependence seen in several major economies during times of crisis. Energy security begins with ensuring uninterrupted supply at a predictable cost. When global energy markets faced turmoil due to geopolitical conflicts and supply chain disruptions, India refused to adopt reactionary measures or bow to international pressure. Instead, it pursued a dual strategy, securing favorable oil and gas deals with traditional suppliers while simultaneously accelerating its investments in green energy projects. This pragmatic approach ensured that domestic fuel prices remained relatively stable, shielding its economy and citizens from the volatility that crippled many other nations. By refusing to sever energy ties under external pressure, India sent a strong message that national interest would always take precedence over geopolitical narratives dictated by others. At the same time, India has recognized that energy security is not merely about supply, it is about sustainability. As the world grapples with climate change and the urgency to reduce carbon emissions, India has emerged as a key driver of renewable energy adoption. With ambitious targets under its national solar mission and a pledge to achieve net zero emissions by 2070, India is reshaping its energy mix. It has built some of the largest solar parks in the world, expanded wind energy capacity, and encouraged rooftop solar adoption through policy incentives. This aggressive transition towards clean energy is not only environmentally responsible, but also strategically advantageous, reducing long-term dependence on fossil fuels and insulating the economy from oil price shocks. Innovation has been the backbone of this transformation. India is not simply importing green technologies, it is developing them domestically and creating ecosystems for global partnerships. From advanced battery storage systems to hydrogen-based fuels, India is investing in technologies that will define the future of energy. The government's production-linked incentive, PLI, schemes for solar modules, advanced chemistry cells, and electric vehicles underscore a clear intent. India will not just consume clean energy solutions, it will manufacture and export them. This positions the country as a potential global hub for renewable energy technology, generating economic growth while contributing to energy independence. Beyond infrastructure and technology, India's approach to energy innovation includes digital integration. Smart grids, AI-driven energy management systems, and blockchain-based solutions for energy trading are being explored to optimize efficiency and reduce losses. This technological infusion ensures that the energy sector evolves beyond traditional frameworks, making it more resilient, adaptive, and future-ready. Another critical element is India's leadership in global climate diplomacy. Through initiatives like the International Solar Alliance, India has gone beyond domestic reforms to create collaborative platforms that enable other nations to transition to clean energy. This not only strengthens India's global influence, but also reinforces its image as a responsible power that champions sustainable development. Ultimately, India's strategy on energy security and innovation reflects a powerful vision, one that aligns economic growth with environmental stewardship, sovereignty with global leadership. India's advancements in the military and technological domains have marked a turning point in its strategic posture, transforming it from a largely defensive power into a nation capable of asserting strength across multiple spheres. This transformation is not an isolated development, but part of a deliberate, long-term vision that ties national security to technological innovation and economic resilience. The global community, long accustomed to viewing India as a regional player dependent on imports for its defense needs, has been taken by surprise at the speed and scale of this evolution. For decades, India faced the challenge of being heavily reliant on foreign suppliers for critical military hardware. This dependence not only limited strategic flexibility, but also created vulnerabilities during crises when supply chains were disrupted or when geopolitical considerations influenced arms deliveries. Recognizing this, India initiated a decisive shift towards self-reliance through programs like Make in India for defense. Today, a significant share of the country's defense procurement involves indigenous manufacturing, with state-owned enterprises and private sector companies jointly developing advanced weapon systems. From combat aircraft like the Tejas to long-range artillery and modernized armored vehicles, India is steadily reducing dependence on imports while building capacity to export defense equipment to friendly nations. This push toward indigenization is not confined to conventional arms production. India has ventured aggressively into advanced technologies that will define the future of warfare. One of the most notable achievements has been in the field of missile systems. With programs like Agni and BrahMos, India has developed a credible deterrent capability, reinforcing its position as a major military power. The country's missile technology now includes a spectrum of systems, from short-range tactical missiles to intercontinental ballistic missiles, providing a robust and layered defense posture. Furthermore, the ongoing development of hypersonic weapons signals India's determination to remain ahead in the next generation of strategic technology. Complementing this missile capability is India's progress in space and cyber domains. Space has emerged as a critical theater of modern warfare, and India has demonstrated its ability to operate effectively in this domain. The successful anti-satellite ASAT test, combined with advanced satellite launch capabilities, underscores India's preparedness to secure its space assets and deny adversaries an upper hand in the event of conflict. Similarly, India's cyber defense programs have expanded significantly, focusing on building resilience against cyber attacks while developing offensive capabilities to deter aggression in the digital realm. This dual approach ensures that India is not merely defending its digital borders, but actively shaping the cybersecurity landscape. Artificial intelligence, robotics, and unmanned systems are also central to India's military modernization. Projects focused on AI-driven surveillance, autonomous combat drones, and predictive analytics for battlefield decision-making are under active development. These initiatives reflect a broader understanding that future wars will be fought with algorithms as much as with ammunition. By integrating AI and automation into its defense architecture, India aims to create a force that is faster, smarter, and capable of operating in complex, multidimensional environments. Naval expansion further adds to this strategic equation. With its growing fleet of indigenous aircraft carriers, stealth frigates, and nuclear-powered submarines, India is asserting control over the Indian Ocean, a region critical for global trade and energy supply routes. This maritime strength not only secures national interests, but also positions India as a net security provider in the Indo-Pacific, reinforcing its role as a stabilizer. India's recent strategic maneuvers have triggered a global ripple effect that extends far beyond its borders, forcing a recalibration of policies in capitals around the world. The move is not just about India asserting itself. It is about the emergence of a new axis in the global order, one that disrupts long-standing assumptions about power, trade, and alliances. In a world accustomed to a hierarchy dominated by a handful of superpowers, India's rise as an independent, decisive force has sent shockwaves through traditional geopolitical and economic frameworks. The most immediate impact has been felt in the domain of global alliances. For decades, the international system operated on binary choices. Nations aligned themselves with either the Western Bloc, led by the United States, or alternative power centers like Russia and, more recently, China. India has broken this mold by demonstrating that it is possible to maintain strong relationships across rival blocs without being subsumed by any. This defiance of conventional alignment has inspired several other nations, particularly in the global south, to consider similar strategies. Countries in Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia are now exploring how they too can navigate between competing powers without sacrificing autonomy. India's model has effectively given birth to a third way, pragmatic multi-alignment, changing the playbook for emerging economies. The economic implications are equally profound. As India positions itself as a manufacturing hub and technology powerhouse, global corporations are redrawing their strategies. The over-reliance on a single country for supply chains, which became evident during recent global disruptions, has prompted multinational firms to diversify production. India has emerged as the top alternative, attracting unprecedented levels of foreign direct investment and strategic partner. Airships. This shift is gradually eroding the monopoly that certain nations once held over global manufacturing and is redistributing economic influence across Asia. Furthermore, India's success in building a digital economy rooted in platforms like UPI has sparked interest in replicating similar models elsewhere, challenging Western tech monopolies and setting new standards for digital governance. Energy markets have also felt the tremors. By refusing to conform to externally imposed restrictions and continuing to secure energy supplies from multiple sources, India has not only stabilized its domestic economy but also altered global trade flows. Traditional energy suppliers, witnessing India's resilience, are rethinking their pricing strategies and long-term contracts. Meanwhile, India's aggressive push toward renewables and green technologies has intensified competition in the clean energy sector, compelling developed nations to accelerate their transition timelines. The ripple effect here is twofold. It enhances India's influence in global energy diplomacy while reshaping the competitive landscape for sustainable technologies. On the security front, India's rise as a self-reliant defense power is prompting shifts in regional and global military strategies. Nations in the Indo-Pacific now view India as a key stabilizing force and are increasingly engaging with it in joint exercises and defense collaborations. This trend is gradually diminishing the dominance of older security architectures that once relied solely on Western powers for balance. Moreover, India's technological leap in areas like artificial intelligence, cyber defense, and space capabilities has spurred a global race for innovation, compelling even advanced economies to accelerate their own research and development efforts. Perhaps the most significant ripple is psychological, the perception shift about who shapes the rules of the game. India's assertive, independent posture has challenged the notion that global governance structures are immutable or controlled exclusively by a few powers, by Taki.